to
House of Whimsical Terror.
I'm Esther.
I'm Mary.
And we're coming to you today from Galway, Ireland.
Yes, we are.
Right.
Telling real stories of the fantastical.
All of our stories are true or told to us as true.
Occasionally we alter names to protect privacy.
And the same for some of the places. But this place, we don't have to. We are right off Shop Street.
Yeah.
And we are with one of my favorite people, Maia Purdue, who is a brilliant storyteller, an amazing theater artist, and has agreed to tell us a couple of the stories. So you'll hear her on another episode as well. But today's episode is The Priest Hole. Those of you who don't know what that is will be learning about that in just a few minutes. So,
yes, you will.
Maya, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcoming you to your own house. So
Yes.
kind of bold of me. But
Well, there's not even any worry about anyone finding me since we're moving out.
Oh, that's true. Yes, and that's exciting news as well.
Back out to the countryside.
Oh, nice.
And the story that I'm telling you today also takes place in the countryside.
Excellent.
As do all the best Irish ghost stories.
Yeah, truly.
Too much noise in the likes of Dublin for there to be any true horror going on.
Right, noise, that's what we think.
That's what we were thinking, yeah.
Yeah, that we're staying in a haunted place right now and you can't, we haven't had anything.
No.
I think it's too noisy.
So busy, yeah.
But okay, so countryside.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am engaged, and this story was told to me about 4 years ago by my future mother-in-law. My partner lives in the county of Sligo. Well, he's from there. He currently lives with me here in Galway.
And he is precious. I love him.
He is. I'm slightly biased. I am marrying him.
Well, yes.
But you made a very good choice. And so did he.
But this story in particular, it relates to his childhood home. And his mother told it to me because she knows I'm interested in history and she knows that I'm kind of interested in the fantastical and the occult. Shanley, meanwhile, my partner, terrified, hates it, does not want to know about ghosts. So he was literally in the corner with his hands over his ears during the story. But their house, where they live in Sligo, is in the middle of the countryside. And it's very quiet. It's an old building. It used to actually be two buildings. It used to be a post office and a shop. And prior to that, it was a B&B in later years.
Oh, wow.
And then previous to that, again, it was kind of, I suppose, a guest house would have been the older, before B&Bs were a thing. So it's had numerous lives and numerous inhabitants over the years.
Okay.
Now the two former buildings have been joined together and it's their family home. And the building has 3 floors in the main building, and that's the oldest part of the building that would have been there in the time of this story, which took place during the penal laws and during English occupation. It was run as a guest house at the time. And cut forward to maybe 100 years later, still a guest house of a different nature, different person running it. And this man was working up in that part of the country and needed to stay somewhere for the night. So kind of staying in a guest house is the done thing at the time because generally there was usually a widow who would be serving you dinner and serving you breakfast and you got your room and board. All the rooms had that thing of you have the sink in the room. Oh, okay. And that kind of more old-fashioned style of what they did in guest houses and B&Bs. And so this man booked himself into the guest house and he arrived and the landlady was there. She said she hadn't many people staying at the minute, so it's nice to have someone arrive. I think it was midweek. So usually she'd have maybe some more people at the weekends. And so he had his meal, but he was working the next day and she told him, yeah, you're up on the 3rd floor. So he goes up to the 3rd floor and there are 2 bedrooms up on the 3rd floor, one on the right and one on the right and there are 2 more on the left. And he turns to the right-hand side and goes in. And when he opens the door, there's someone already in the room. Right. And he goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I must have gone to the wrong one. I thought this was my room. And the man is sitting in a chair in the room and he turns around to him and it's a priest.
Oh, okay.
And he says, oh, that's not a bother at all. are you staying here for the night as well? And he was like, yeah, I'm here tonight. I don't know how long I'm going to be staying. And even though he had decided to have an early night, the two of them got to chatting. And so they had this lovely long chat, and he's telling him about his life and where he's from. He wasn't from Sligo, but he was travelling that area, and he thought he was only going to be staying in the house one night and then moving on. And so eventually their chat subsided, and he said, okay, I'll go back to my own room, and I'll see you in the morning at breakfast. And he goes across the hall to one of the other two rooms up there, which was what he thought was now his room, and he went and slept there. And the next day he went down to breakfast, and he was speaking to the landlady, and he said, oh, I went to the wrong room last night. And she said, oh, did you turn left at the top of the stairs? And he said, no, I went into the room on the right, but the father was in there. She said, what? And he said, oh, there was a priest staying there last night. She said he'd be down for breakfast. And she said, there's no one else up on 3. You were meant to be in the room on the right. And he says, what? And she said, there's no priest staying here.
Wow.
And there's just this moment of quiet, and she goes, but during the penal laws, this was a priest home. And it was raided a few times, and I think that there were priests who died in this house. And the man realises he'd gone into the right room. But the man that was staying there was one of the priests who had died 100 years ago in that house.
That gave me the chills.
Yeah. So during
and we actually sleep in that room.
That's so great.
Whenever we stay in the house, we're up on 3 on the right hand side.
Poor Shanley.
I love it. And the thing is, the house has, because it's an older house, there are sometimes like doors banging and things like that. And when they first moved in there, for quite a while, they'd lock the doors at night and go to sleep. And when they woke up in the morning, all the doors would be open.
Wow.
And this went on for a number of years. It happened when their grandmother was over it. And then eventually it just stopped. And I think the spirits kind of decided, oh, okay, they're here to stay. They haven't been scared off by us yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a great story.
That is a wonderful story.
And you were telling us that these penal laws, it was illegal to be Catholic.
So the penal laws, the practicing of Catholicism was outlawed in Ireland. These are also the same laws actually that came in around the Irish language. Though a lot of the time they're blamed entirely for the loss of the Irish language, and there's actually a slightly more complicated history of Irish people essentially choosing to speak English because it was more practical. If you wanted to live abroad, you needed to speak English, and so people chose to speak English. And Brian Friel shows us through Moira in translations that there are plenty of people who wanted to speak English because it was more practical. And we're nothing if not practical as a nation. But so priest holes were places where priests hid, and they would travel around the country doing this and hiding. And one of my, actually, I'd forgotten to say this to you earlier, but one of my grandmother's relations was Geoffrey Keating, who in Tipperary was a priest who was travelling around, and he wrote about his experiences travelling around in hiding.
Fascinating.
And priests would hide in forests. Some people would put them up. So this house was a priest hole where they would hide priests, and then they would stay there a night and move on. And often, so say where I grew up in South Tipperary, there's a wood near me in Dundrum that was called Bishop's Wood, and that was because priests used to hide there. And then the village that I grew up in, where my parents don't live there anymore, but that's where I went to primary school and things. It was called Knockavilla, which is Canuckavilla, Hill of the Sacred Oak. But there was a mass rock there, and the priests who were in hiding would go and say mass at these rocks while they were in a community, almost to thank the community for hiding them.
Yes.
And then they would move on. So this house was a priest hole at one point in its history. And so they were hiding priests and allowing them to move on. Which is also ironic because it's a Protestant area. It's right next to a Protestant church, but there was kind of a feeling of this isn't right.
Yeah.
And so they gave them shelter.
Wow.
That is a brilliant story.
It is beautiful that they gave them shelter.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and the mass rocks, those kind of large rocks that might be in the middle of a field or
Yeah,
somewhere
and then
unusual.
some farmers have moved them in modern times to like be in the corner of the field or something so that they can plough normally. But a lot of the like more famous ones would still be in situ. And so like if you're walking in the burn, there are mass rocks that are like signed out on the little like posters they have that will be like this a mass rock.
In the burn.
And they'd generally be in kind of more rural areas because it was easier to hide.
Right. Right.
So, for example, like woods and forests, a lot of priests were hiding in the forest and people from the community would bring them food or blankets or things like that. And that was their way of thanking them. And it all kind of went on undercover, hush hush.
That is fascinating part of the history. And we love historical context around stories.
Yeah.
So
Yes, and such a powerful story.
Yes.
You know, I think there's a lesson in all stories to be learned.
Yeah.
You know, and that sometimes humans have to learn them over and over.
I believe in spirits. I don't really believe in this idea of them being scary because I'm kind of like, well, I know myself, like if I died, if I were coming back, it would be to check on people and places rather than to scare them.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the guardian.
Yeah.
I would definitely come back and scare people.
I think I might inconvenience them.
Oh, there you go.
I think I'd like move their keys and stuff. I'd gaslight the living.
Maybe some of that.
We have a theater artist friend, a really lovely man named Raphael, and I told him the other night, I did this thing on his, like, right on the back of his collar. I said, I'll do this, you'll know it's me.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you out there, everyone who's listening, for joining us. Please come back and listen to more stories and share. And for now, so long, good friends. Until next time, when we meet back at the house.